inheritance, my father bought a little boy to replace me. 5 years later, under the pretense of caring for the daughter of an old friend, he brought me back home. I grew up following his demands, learning everything only to become the wife of Ethan Cole. But Ethan never liked me. In his heart, there was only Hannah Miller, the woman he adored. Whenever Lily said she missed him, he immediately abandoned me, his 7-month pregnant wife, on the highway. Giving you this child is already the biggest concession I'll make. Learn to be satisfied, he said. In the pouring rain, the road was slippery, the car lost control, and I was thrown out. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the night of the company's year-end party. Hannah Miller deliberately bumped into me, causing the juice in my hand to spill onto her evening gown. Think carefully about how you'll explain this to Ethan, she sneered. I smiled and tipped a glass of red wine over her head. Now this looks truly pitiful, doesn't it? In my previous life, after the car hit me, I didn't die immediately. Heavy rain blurred my vision, but I clearly heard the driver making a call. Hannah, I've already done the job. Are you still not at ease? I'll wait until she stops breathing before calling the police. It was Hannah Miller. She staged the car accident to kill me. And Ethan Cole, the man who left me on the highway, was her accomplice. When I opened my eyes again, the cold winds sweeping through the hallway made me shiver. Hannah Miller deliberately bumped into me once more, spilling the juice in my hand onto her gorgeous evening gown. She laughed, glanced toward the brightly lit hall, lifted her chin arrogantly, and mocked, "Guess what everyone will say about you? That pregnancy hormones made you paranoid about your husband? Or that you're abusing employees by flaunting your status as the CEO's wife?" The baby in my belly kicked, and as I lowered my head to look at the slight curve, I instantly realized I had returned to the exact day Hannah tried to provoke me. It was also the day when the cracks began to show in my fake relationship with Ethan Cole. Seeing me stay silent, Hannah laughed even more smugly. "So, how will you explain this to Ethan?" she taunted. I curved my lips into a smile, grabbed the wine glass from her hand, and poured it straight over her head. Now this looks pitiful enough, doesn't it? Red wine trickled down Hannah Miller's face and hair, dripping onto her body. Dark red stains bloomed across her pristine white dress, making her look truly miserable. She stared at me wide-eyed in disbelief. "Emma, are you insane?" I hurled the empty glass aside, seized her wrist, and tightened my grip. "Today I'll show you what it really means to use power to bully others." "Let go," I said. "Let go." Hannah thrashed violently, but she couldn't break free. "How dare you treat me like this? Ethan will never forgive you." Footsteps hurried from behind. "Ethan, help me," Hannah screamed. At that moment, I released her wrist and she flung her arm hard, causing me to fall backward uncontrollably. "Hannah, what are you trying to do?" My scream pierced through the night, drawing everyone's attention in the banquet hall. In my previous life, Hannah had orchestrated everything. She not only poured juice on her own dress, but also pretended I had shoved her, scratching her wrist in the process. This act happened to be seen by Ethan Cole and his mother the moment they arrived. That day, Ethan completely ignored me, the one carrying his child, and rushed straight to Hannah's side. The moment he saw the stains on her gown and the scratch on her wrist, his emotions exploded. He dragged me out of my mother's arms. "Who gave you the guts to lay a hand on my woman?" Ethan dragged me in front of Hannah Miller. "Apologize." My mother, horrified, rushed to shield me. "Ethan, Emma is your legal wife." But Ethan wasn't afraid of his mother. He glared at me with resentment. "Emma, giving you this child is already the biggest concession I'll make. You should know your place." From that moment, our relationship officially cracked, and their affair was laid bare before our parents. Afterward, my mother always urged me to endure, and in her worry, accidentally revealed the truth about my identity. "You are our biological daughter. The position of Mrs. Cole rightfully belongs to you, but you must never let Ethan find out." I was stunned. I had never imagined my life could be this twisted. I understood my mother's fears, so I obeyed her and swallowed the humiliation, biting down on my grievances. But I never expected Hannah Miller to be unwilling to remain a hidden mistress. It wasn't until I took my last breath in my previous life that I realized my fate had to be in my own hands. This time, I didn't fall because my mother caught me in time. "Emma, are you hurt?" she asked. I quickly shook my head and spoke first. Hannah suddenly poured juice and wine on herself. When I tried to stop her, she shoved me. In my past life, Hannah had used this very trick to turn the tables. Other than my mother, no one believed me. My mother, furious, was about to question Hannah when Ethan interrupted. "Impossible. Hannah has no reason to do that." Hannah didn't rush to deny it. She stood pitifully behind Ethan, looking like a fragile little rabbit, tears welling in her eyes. "I only wanted to greet Mrs. Cole, but I don't know why she's accusing me like this." Ethan comforted Hannah while glaring at me with furrowed brows. "Emma, don't think that just because you're pregnant, you can do whatever you want." The commotion in the hallway quickly attracted attention, but because of our family's status, no one dared to come closer. When I saw my father approaching, I pressed into my mother's embrace and began to sob. She admitted she's carrying Ethan's child and told me to step aside. She even said that from now on, everything in the Cole family will belong to her. Tears filled my eyes as I looked at Ethan. "Ethan, is what she said true? Do you really not want me and the baby anymore?" Then I buried my face into my mother's shoulder, crying uncontrollably. In my previous life, I only learned much later that Hannah was pregnant. But this time I was determined to let my father know right here and now. Ethan's gaze on me was as cold as ice, filled with disgust, but the moment he heard Hannah was pregnant, his eyes lit up and a joyful smile spread across his lips. "Hannah, is that true?" His voice trembled with excitement he couldn't hide. His hands instinctively rested on her shoulders, a stark contrast to his reaction when he first learned I was carrying his child. Back then he had simply sighed with relief, as if completing a duty. The next day, under the excuse of letting me rest, he moved into the guest room where Hannah stayed. Watching me, Hannah was certain I had found out about her pregnancy. But why would I reveal it in front of everyone? Even knowing it might be a trap, she didn't want to miss the chance to openly step into the Cole family. Blushing shyly, Hannah nodded. "I only just found out. I haven't even had the chance to tell you." Overjoyed, Ethan wrapped her tightly in his arms. "That's wonderful. Finally, we're going to have a child." Hannah nestled perfectly against him, while he lifted his gaze to me, eyes fixed on me with a faintly curved, mocking smile. When he was young, because of his father's harshness, Ethan once couldn't bear the pressure and ran away from home. In Harbor City, he was pickpocketed and fainted from hunger at the doorstep of a family. That family took him in and gave him warmth like real relatives. The little girl, a year younger than him, watched flowers and the sea with him, caught fish and shrimp with him, and became the light in his heart. From then on, her figure rooted and grew deep inside Ethan Cole's heart. That girl was Hannah Miller. All these years, they never lost contact. 2 years ago, after graduation, Ethan returned to the country and joined the Cole Group. The very first thing he did was arrange for Hannah to become his personal secretary. During those 2 years, while listening to his parents and marrying me, preparing to have a child with me, he was also whispering words of love and making promises to Hannah. Hannah always knew I existed, but she never fought or stirred trouble. She often told him, "As long as I can be by your side, I don't care who I am or what position I hold." Feeling guilty, Ethan promised her that once Emma gave birth, he would give her a large sum of money and then send her away from the Cole family. In my previous life, after the banquet, when I was hospitalized to protect my pregnancy, Hannah came to visit. She told me countless things, both about her love with Ethan and the happy future he had promised her. She used her words to provoke and humiliate me, hoping to make me miscarry. What Ethan never realized was that Hannah's desire was never just to become Mrs. Cole. In the hallway, my father said nothing, but once he entered the lounge, he slapped Ethan so hard that the sound echoed. Ethan clutched his burning cheek in anger and shouted without yielding, "From childhood until now, I've followed every order you gave me. Even marrying someone I don't love, I did it for you. Now that Emma is pregnant, why can't I be with the woman I truly love?" Hannah knelt, sobbing as she pleaded with Chairman Cole. "It's all my fault. Please don't blame Ethan. But loving someone isn't wrong. All I want now is to give birth to this baby safely." But my father, who had battled in the business world for decades, saw straight through Hannah's intentions and schemes. She thought that with Ethan's love and the child in her womb, getting what she wanted was only a matter of time. What she didn't realize was that behind me stood my real parents. What I hadn't understood in my past life was now clear to everyone else. Ethan Cole was the heir of the Cole family in name only. In truth, he was the son-in-law my father had groomed from childhood to marry into our family. Though my father never truly loved me, he placed immense expectations on the child in my womb. He would never allow anyone to replace his own grandchild. My mother once told me that years ago, during the inheritance disputes, my grandfather had left a will stating that only the one who gave birth to a son would have the right to inherit. But after a car accident, my father lost his ability to have children. That made me, still in my mother's belly, his only hope and his final trump card. That was why, back then, he used Ethan to replace me. It was his last resort. During the 5 years I was sent away, I wasn't raised beside my parents, but my father still arranged an excellent environment for me to grow up in. When I turned 5, he brought me back under the pretense of caring for an old friend's daughter. From then on, he devoted himself to raising me. Over the years, his demands of me were extremely strict. From music, chess, calligraphy, to painting, there was nothing I didn't have to learn. That year, I once wanted to study art, but my father firmly opposed it. He forced me to study business alongside Ethan Cole. I didn't dare resist. I only dared to secretly complain to my mother, if my life is already decided to be the wife of the Cole family, what's the point of learning all these things? When my mother heard me, she hesitated for a long time before softly saying, "Emma, you're not like everyone else." At the time, the different I understood was nothing like what she actually meant. But fortunately, I knew how to obey. Whatever my father told me to study, I studied. I even became better than Ethan Cole. This time, I deliberately exposed Hannah Miller's pregnancy to force my father to take a clear stance. Only by making Ethan and Hannah confront everything openly could my father finally see Ethan's true colors and abandon him completely. Just as I had predicted, contempt flickered in my father's eyes. He pulled out his checkbook and scribbled a few lines. "Here's $3 million. Tomorrow I'll have someone arrange for your abortion. Stay here and rest tonight." Hannah wept miserably, while Ethan lost his mind, shouting furiously and demanding to know why. My father's voice was icy and stern, leaving no room for argument. The wife of my son-in-law, the mother of my grandchild, can only be Emma. The next morning, as soon as I woke up, I heard that Ethan had secretly taken Hannah away in the middle of the night. My mother comforted me endlessly. As long as she still wants to be part of the Cole family, sooner or later she'll come back. Tears welled in my eyes. Ethan once told me he never liked me. He only married and had a child with me because of his parents. Now that Hannah is pregnant, sooner or later the position of Mrs. Cole will be hers. My father slammed his chopsticks on the table, his voice cold as ice, over my dead body. The sudden sound startled me, and tears streamed down my face. His gaze fell on my large belly, and for once his voice softened. "If he won't obey me, then forget him. I still have my grandson. The most important thing now is that you focus on your pregnancy and give birth safely." Choking back sobs, I nodded obediently. "I'll listen, Dad." The deep crease between his brows finally loosened a little, and satisfaction appeared on his face. Ethan disappeared for 3 days before finally returning home under my father's threats. But then, every other day he vanished again. My father fumed with rage, but he couldn't really lock him in my room or tie him up at home. All he could do was curse him as unfilial whenever he stayed away, and threaten to cut off his inheritance if he dared to run off again. At first, Ethan still showed some fear. But when he realized my father was only bluffing, he grew bolder and more defiant. Once, he even disappeared for 3 nights in a row. I knew his habits, so I often chose moments when he was showering to call his phone. Most of the time, Hannah answered. Once, I pretended to accidentally put the call on speaker so my parents could hear. Hannah provoked me through the line, her voice sweet and scornful. "Ethan already said it. There will only ever be one Mrs. Cole in his heart, and that's me." I cursed her as a mistress who destroyed marriages, but she only laughed mockingly. "The one who isn't loved is the real intruder." For the first time in his life, my father flew into such a rage that he smashed everything in sight. I hired a private investigator to follow Ethan. He had bought Hannah an apartment in the city center, where they lived together like husband and wife. Every time she went to a prenatal checkup, he accompanied her. They even attended parenting classes together and shopped at mother and baby stores. In outsiders' eyes, they looked like a deeply affectionate married couple. I asked the detective to send me the photos, and I waited until breakfast when both of my parents were present. I laid the envelope open in front of them, and then broke down in tears. My father was so furious, he immediately called a lawyer, saying he wanted to change his will. I didn't know if he truly did so, but at the very least, his attitude had started to shift. Seeing me so depressed all day, my mother suggested we go shopping. As soon as we reached the store entrance, a familiar sales clerk greeted us warmly with a smile. "Hello, Mrs. Cole. The handbag you ordered has arrived. I was just about to call you," the sales clerk said. My mother looked at me curiously. "What bag did you order? Show me," she said, pulling me inside the store. I walked along, shaking my head in confusion. "I haven't ordered any bag recently. They must have mistaken me for someone else." My mother's face darkened, her eyes turning cold as she looked at the clerk. Though she was always gentle in front of my father, after being a Cole daughter-in-law for decades, she still carried an aura that intimidated outsiders. The clerk flinched and stepped back nervously before whispering to me, loud enough for my mother to hear. "Mrs. Cole, did I say something wrong?" I patted her shoulder lightly and spoke softly. "It's fine, it's not your fault." I forced a smile and was about to persuade my mother to leave, but she shook her head firmly. "I want to see who dares to impersonate you and claim to be Mrs. Cole." Biting my lip, I felt a wave of guilt. "Mom, I'm sorry. Tonight, I might embarrass the Cole family." She gently patted the back of my hand and said warmly, "Emma, remember who you are. No one can replace you." The truth was that handbag had indeed been ordered by Ethan Cole back when the two of us hadn't completely fallen out. That day he had gone shopping with me and used my money to place the order. I hadn't known because while he was paying the deposit, I was changing clothes. We bought many things that day, and I hadn't checked every item. I didn't even notice when Ethan quietly took the receipt. A few days ago, when I went shopping with my best friend, she spotted that exact handbag. The sales clerk accidentally mentioned it, and only then did I piece everything together. That evening, I went through my entire collection of handbags, jewelry, and accessories. That was when I discovered Ethan was a repeat offender. A professional at it. So I made a deal with the sales clerk to stage a scene. She worked at a luxury boutique where gossip about wealthy families was common. She had heard bits and pieces about me. Though she had deceived customers for the sake of sales before, when faced with my sincere request, generosity, and promise to protect her from any trouble, she finally agreed to help. I asked her to call Ethan and tell him the bag was ready, arranging a pickup time. When he agreed, I had my best friend persuade my father, who was one of his business partners, to reschedule a dinner meeting for that very night. My bet was that Hannah Miller wouldn't be able to resist and would show up herself. According to the staff, every time new stock arrived, she always came the same day. And just as I expected, Hannah arrived right on time. The moment she stepped into the boutique, the clerk greeted her with a bright smile. "Mrs. Cole, the handbag you ordered is here." Hannah nodded in satisfaction and handed over the receipt. "I'm here to pick it up." I had my back to her as I tried on that very handbag nearby. Hannah froze for a moment when she saw it on my shoulder but quickly regained her composure. The clerk discreetly slipped the receipt into my hand. "Mrs. Cole, she's here." I gave a faint hum of acknowledgement, glanced down at the receipt with my name and ID clearly printed, and said, "Wrap it up." The clerk nodded and began packing the handbag skillfully. Hannah was completely ignored. She stood aside waiting for a long time, but no one paid her any attention. She glanced at me twice, once when the clerk placed the handbag into the box, and again when the gift box was handed directly into my hands. Since my back was still turned to her, she only suspected but wasn't certain. The moment she saw her handbag being delivered to me, her fury erupted. She charged forward, trying to snatch it from my hands. That bag is mine. Why are you giving it to her? I turned around and shoved the receipt in her face. Is your name Emma Cole? Or are you trying to impersonate me and call yourself Emma Cole, Miss Miller? Hannah froze for a moment, but when she saw I had come alone, her arrogance flared. There's no rule that says the one who picks it up has to be the one who ordered it. Ethan gave me that receipt. The bag is obviously mine. I let out a cold laugh, deliberately raising my voice. You're just my husband's secretary. Why are you speaking so intimately, as if you were his wife, Miss Miller? You're only here to pick something up on his behalf, yet you dare to overstep and act like the official Mrs. Cole? Although Hannah loved being addressed as Mrs. Cole, in this situation, she absolutely didn't dare admit her role as the mistress. If she really became Mrs. Cole one day, how would she face the circle of society ladies if everyone remembered this? My words struck her so hard her lips trembled. Her face flushed red, then turned pale, and for a moment she was speechless. I took the handbag from the clerk and turned to leave. Hannah, unwilling to accept defeat, rushed after me and snatched at the bag. I won't let you take this. This bag is mine. I held tightly to the handle, refusing to let go. Hannah grew furious and pulled hard. We struggled back and forth, shoving each other, and the whole boutique descended into chaos. My pregnancy was obvious to everyone, but since no one knew Hannah was also carrying a child, the staff only worried I might fall. They rushed to separate us, shielding me carefully. I had already asked my best friend to wait nearby and call me when Hannah walked in. As soon as I picked up the phone, I pretended to panic and spilled tea on my mother, just as Hannah entered. My mother was still changing in the fitting room, but when she heard the commotion, she rushed out, only to catch Hannah shoving me. My mother's fury exploded. She stormed toward Hannah and slapped her twice without hesitation. Who gave you the guts to lay a hand on Emma? I've seen plenty of mistresses, but never one this shameless. If I don't teach you a lesson today, you'll think the women of the Cole family are easy to bully. Her momentum was so fierce that even the sales clerks instinctively stepped back. The first slap left Hannah dizzy, unable to stand straight. The second sent her crashing to the floor. Two bright red handprints stood out starkly on her pale cheeks. Someone instinctively stepped forward to help her, but my mother glared and barked, "Anyone who dares touch her is standing against the Cole family." The staff quickly pulled their hands back and silently gathered on my side. Hannah sobbed as she dialed Ethan's number, but he didn't answer. At that moment, Ethan was happily drinking and chatting with my father and my best friend's brother, completely unaware of what was happening. Security from the mall arrived quickly, and the boutique had to temporarily close. Even so, they couldn't stop the curious crowd from pressing forward. People outside whispered, their faces full of gossip, and many raised their phones to take photos and record videos. Hannah soon vanished from sight, but my mother and I didn't rush to leave. Instead, she sat down on the sofa, pulled me beside her, and casually pointed at several handbags and outfits. This one, and that one too. Pack them all. Then she gestured toward me as I pulled out my card to pay. Everyone, take a good look. This is the real Mrs. Cole. All the staff bowed in unison. Good evening, Mrs. Cole. On the way home, my mother opened her banking app and transferred me an amount even greater than what I had just spent. Buy whatever you want. If it's not enough, tell me. Within just an hour, what happened tonight had spread across the entire city. Countless society ladies were already messaging me. Old acquaintances reached out, probing carefully, while close friends praised me for being bold. One even texted, "Emma, you did what I never dared to do." I couldn't take the credit for myself. I was just fortunate to have in-laws who understood. While my father scolded me with a stern face, my mother was different. She bravely stood up to defend me. Ethan is using his wife's money to support a mistress. Isn't that more disgraceful? What did Emma do wrong? Should she just endure and let a mistress trample her? Today, Hannah dares to covet a man who doesn't belong to her. Tomorrow, she'll covet property that isn't hers either. Emma did this to protect the Cole family's honor. This time, my mother wasn't weak like before. It felt wonderful. Every word she spoke landed like a drumbeat against my father's chest, reverberating heavily. For the first time, I saw doubt appear on his face. That night, Ethan yanked me straight out of bed. "Emma, you shameless woman." He raised his hand to strike me, but my father, who had rushed over after hearing what was happening, arrived just in time to block him. "For another woman, you dare raise your hand against your wife?" My father kicked Ethan hard in the leg, his voice thundering. "Kneel." Ethan staggered, bracing against the wall to steady himself. He shouted angrily, "I'm your real son. Why are you always siding with an outsider?" He shoved my father's hand away and stormed out of the house. My father nearly stumbled and fell, and I rushed to catch his arm. "Dad, please take care of yourself." He panted heavily, rage radiating off him like a bull provoked beyond control. "Very good. This is the son I poured my heart into raising." The next morning, my father's assistant arrived in a rush at the Cole estate. "Chairman, we failed to meet Mr. Smith at the airport and we can't reach Director Cole. This matter was supposed to be handled directly by him. I don't have Mr. Smith's personal contact information or his assistant's. We've sent emails but haven't received any reply. Mr. Smith is the head of the AN Group, our biggest client. This year, he holds a contract worth hundreds of millions, a deal Director Cole worked extremely hard to secure. Mr. Smith came here for an inspection. If everything goes well, both sides will sign the partnership." In my previous life, all the arrangements for Mr. Smith's visit were handled personally by Ethan, and this order was what allowed him to establish himself so quickly at Cole Group. According to the plan, he was supposed to personally meet Mr. Smith at the airport that morning. But because he stormed out last night, my father, worried something might go wrong, had already sent the assistant to follow him during the night. Yet it was still too late. Hearing the name Smith, I paused to think. Is Mr. Smith's family name Liu? My father turned to look at the assistant, who immediately answered respectfully, "Yes, Mrs. Cole. I heard he's originally from Beijing. When he was 6, his family emigrated to France." I unlocked my phone, found a group photo, and handed it to the assistant. "Take a look. Is this him? If so, I might have a way to reach him." While the assistant confirmed, I turned to my father. "Liu Smith was my classmate in college. His wife and I are still in frequent contact." The assistant glanced once and said firmly, "Yes, that's him. This is Mr. Smith. I've seen his photo in Director Cole's files." I smiled and nodded. Right in front of my father and the assistant, I dialed his number. I spoke in French, so they couldn't understand the conversation. After hanging up, I wrote down a phone number and a hotel address. I handed the note to my father. "Mr. Smith and his team just changed hotels. If the assistant goes there now, he'll still make it in time." My father gave a few more instructions, and the assistant left the Cole estate in a hurry. I placed a cup of ginseng tea in front of my father. "I already arranged afternoon tea with Smith's wife, Ray. Don't worry, Dad. This order will definitely belong to the Cole family." His eyes glowed with approval. "You're calmer than Ethan ever was." I smiled softly. "I've been part of the Cole family since I was 5. I've always treated you as my real father. I won't let down all the years you've spent raising me." After lunch, the driver took me to meet Smith. He was lounging comfortably on the sofa, one leg crossed over the other, his arm draped lazily along the backrest. His gaze fell immediately on my visibly pregnant belly. "I almost forgot to congratulate you," I returned a steady smile. "Should I be thanking you for that?" Smith smirked. "I was surprised when you called me." I shrugged. "That's only natural. The way we parted after graduation wasn't exactly pleasant." Smith quickly corrected me. "Emma, you broke up with me one-sidedly. I never stopped liking you." I lifted my left hand, the large wedding ring on my ring finger catching the light. "But my answer has always been no. I never intended to stay for you. 6 years ago, my parents sent Ethan and me to study in the US. The moment the plane took off, Ethan's disdain for me became obvious. As soon as we landed, he moved straight into an apartment he had rented in advance. I mostly lived in the dorms and only returned to the house my parents bought during holidays. We were from the same hometown, at the same school, in the same program. But in the eyes of our classmates, Ethan and I were like 2 parallel lines, never crossing. Because of group projects, I started having chances to interact with Smith. Slowly, we talked more and shared more. He was surprised to discover how many interests we had in common, how similar our outlooks on life were. 2 young, lonely hearts naturally drew closer. Smith pursued me fiercely. I was honest with him about my arranged relationship with Ethan, but he didn't care. He even promised to keep us a secret. I always thought we were just two passers-by, briefly crossing each other's paths, but right before I returned home, Smith suddenly proposed to me. I firmly refused and left with Ethan, stepping into the life of Mrs. Cole that my family had arranged for me. If not for Hannah Miller, I might have lived that role for the rest of my life, but now I must return to the life that truly belongs to me. From the very beginning, when Ethan first made contact with Smith, I already knew. In fact, I was the one who had given him Smith's number. Back in college, Ethan wasn't close to classmates and rarely interacted. He always disappeared during holidays, leaving me to complete most of the group projects alone. At the time, I thought he just despised me, but couldn't resist using me as free labor. Looking back now, perhaps during those absences he was flying back home to meet Hannah. After our marriage, my father pressured me heavily to conceive quickly. My mother often came to me with tears in her eyes, begging me to try. But what they didn't know was that Ethan had never touched me. No matter how hard I tried, it was useless. Ethan knew I had worked with Smith a few times and that we were fairly close. Using pregnancy as leverage, he forced me to help him advance this deal. I agreed. We timed everything for ovulation, and the baby was conceived on the first attempt. With that, Smith also initially agreed to work with Ethan, and the project began progressing smoothly. But Ethan Cole went around bragging everywhere that because of his personal relationship with Smith, the contract had fallen into the Cole family's hands. From then on, he often used it to humiliate me. "You're no different from a streetwalker. And me? I'm just like Jenny. Tell me, what do you want me to do?" Smith looked at me with complete sincerity. "As long as you ask, I'll never refuse." I had already called Smith the night before, asking him for a favor. After arriving in the country, I wanted him to go along with Ethan first, then meet my father's assistant in the morning. Everything else could be explained when he met me that afternoon. I took a sip of juice. "You don't need to do anything else." Smith frowned. "If I'm not mistaken, you're fighting against the Coles right now, aren't you?" I smiled faintly. "More accurately, I'm not qualified to fight yet, but if I have your support, I'll have a seat at the table." I told him everything about my situation without hiding anything. Smith nodded seriously. To be honest, I already had faith in Cole Group's products, but compared to him, I'd much rather work with you. He spread his arms as if to embrace me. I only extended my hand for a firm shake. "Let's cooperate happily." When I returned home, Ethan was already waiting in the room, his gaze cold and furious, venom dripping from his eyes. According to the plan, after meeting my father's assistant, Smith would inform Ethan that he needed to reconsider working with Cole Group. Ethan had originally planned to follow the same script as in my past life, using the AN contract to threaten my father into accepting Hannah Miller, then divorcing me once he gained full control of Cole Group so he could marry her. But now, that move had been ruined. He was enraged, shoving me hard onto the bed. "Emma, at worst I'll give up the AN contract, but I will never let you win. You're manipulative, vicious. I truly regret marrying you. Today I came back to tell you, your title as Mrs. Cole ends here. Be ready to receive the divorce papers." My phone and wallet spilled across the bed, scattering to the floor. I burst into tears, clinging to him desperately. "Ethan, I only don't want our personal problems to make Cole Group lose such a huge contract. I've been part of the Cole family since I was 5. If you don't want me anymore, where can I go? And what about our baby, our innocent child?" Sobbing, I threw myself into his arms, but he shoved me away forcefully. "Stop acting. You put on one face in front of people, another behind their backs. It's disgusting. The moment you used pregnancy as leverage to meet Smith, I knew you weren't simple." He climbed onto the bed, pinning me beneath him. "As for this baby, I'll deal with it right now." "No, Ethan, you can't do this to me and our child." I struggled with all my strength, wrapping my arms tightly around my belly to protect the baby. In the chaos, the phone on the bed flipped over, its screen glowing brightly in the dim room. The call was still connected. I strained my ears and heard my father's furious roar through the line. Ethan's expression changed instantly. He grabbed the phone in panic, stammering, "Dad, don't let Emma fool you. She set me up." After hurriedly hanging up, He hurled the phone straight at me. "Emma, don't think everything will go your way. Just wait and see." My father rushed back home. The moment he stepped inside, he saw me sobbing in my mother's arms, trembling with fear. He could only let out a heavy sigh. Wiping away tears, I choked out, "Tomorrow, the Coles have their own schedule, but I've already arranged a meeting with Grace. Smith agreed to give us an hour." My father nodded. "Emma, you've suffered too much." Then he asked gently, "Can you come with me tomorrow?" The meeting the next day went beautifully. Most of the time, Smith and his wife spoke only with me. My father's assistant tried several times to steer the conversation toward business, but Smith simply smiled and declined. "Saturday is personal time. I don't discuss work then." Then he turned politely to me, "But I am very interested in Jenny's invitation to tour the factory." His eyes lingered on me with meaning. "Next Monday, Ray will come along. Could you be our host?" Ray and I exchanged a smile, our hands tightening together. "It would be my honor," I said. After that, everything progressed smoothly. To give me a legitimate reason to attend negotiations, my father appointed me as Director of Public Relations at Cole Group. 2 weeks later, under my lead, AN and Cole Group officially signed a 5-year supply contract, 2 years longer than the draft Ethan had once negotiated. When I placed the contract on my father's desk, he tapped his fingers against the folder, his voice full of satisfaction. "Emma, this is even better than I expected." I smiled modestly. "After all, Dad, I'm your own student, trained by you." Once I began working, my days became busy but full of energy. Most importantly, I finally felt truly happy. Ethan came home less and less and rarely showed up at the company. My father reassigned him to other departments, cut his salary, and gradually pushed him from heir apparent to an outsider in Cole Group. During that time, my uncle and cousins came by more than once to stir trouble. Each time, I stepped forward with my pregnant belly, leading 10 bodyguards, yet still smiling as brightly as a flower. As for Hannah Miller, she hadn't shown her face at the company in a long while. Employees dared not speak about it in front of me, but behind my back, the gossip was endless. They said her sick leave request had been personally submitted to HR by Ethan. At dinner, I discussed personnel matters with my father. Some departments are overstaffed, while others are severely short. If we don't adjust soon, the imbalance will drag down the entire system. Cole Group will become nothing but a paper tiger. My father had never liked the people my uncle had forced into the company, so he seized the chance to start a massive restructuring. Ethan was no longer vice president, and without that position, there was no need for Hannah as his secretary. She became the most awkward burden to deal with. The HR director, who was shrewd, asked me directly how I wanted to arrange Hannah. According to labor laws, pregnant employees are protected, but appropriate transfers are still allowed. I gave a cold smile. "I happen to need a secretary. Let's move Miss Miller to PR." The next day, Ethan stormed into my office and slammed Hannah's medical report on my desk. "Hone needs to be hospitalized for bed rest until delivery. She can't work." I feigned surprise. "A threatened miscarriage? Then she must be very careful. Would 3 months leave be enough?" Ethan didn't even look at me. "The doctor said she has to stay in the hospital until after the baby is born." I picked up my pen and signed the approval. "Fine." The following day, the union chair led staff from PR and HR to visit Hannah at the hospital. But the nurse said, "There's no such patient here." The PR staff smiled politely. "That's strange. She said her condition was very serious, that she had to stay hospitalized until delivery. Our company's senior leadership even sent their regards. Could you please check again?" The nurse grew impatient. "I told you already, there's no such person. What's there to check?" The union chair frowned with suspicion. Could it be that this medical report was forged by Miss Miller? HR staff examined the report carefully. "No, this document is real. It bears the doctor's signature and the official hospital seal, unless someone inside abused their authority." She raised her voice deliberately, and at once, patients and families nearby gathered around, eager to listen in. The head nurse quickly ushered them into an office. Before long, a young doctor rushed in. "Are you all looking for Hannah Miller? Oh, she's not in this ward. Let me take you over there." The entire group trailed behind him to another wing. When we arrived, Hannah was being helped onto a bed. She wore elegant clothes, had her makeup perfectly done, and not a single strand of hair was out of place. Next to her were several luxury shopping bags, the perfect image of a pampered socialite checking into the hospital for prenatal care. The staff set down a fruit basket and handed a red envelope to the woman who introduced herself as Hannah's mother. "Ma'am, this is a gift our boss asked us to deliver. Please use it to buy some nourishment for Miss Miller." The woman beamed as she accepted it. "It seems not only young Master Cole treats our Hannah well, but even Chairman Cole values her. Thank you. Please tell the chairman that Hannah will certainly give him a fair, healthy grandson." Since Ethan and I had never held a wedding, Hannah's mother didn't know he was already married. Back in Harbor City, she often bragged to relatives and neighbors about her future son-in-law. After moving to Capital City, she hadn't given up the habit. The room fell silent. Everyone was stunned. At the company, although people tacitly understood the relationship between Hannah and Ethan, this was the first time they'd witnessed the scandal openly, right in front of the legal wife. The drama was almost too much to believe. Hannah quickly tried to stop her mother. "Mom, why are you saying things like that?" I stepped through the doorway. "Your daughter marrying Ethan Cole? That's a little difficult, I'm afraid." Hannah's face darkened the moment she saw me, as if remembering the slaps from last time. She shrank back instinctively. Her mother frowned with displeasure. "Impossible. Ethan told me himself that he would marry Hannah." Then she hesitated and asked, "And who are you?" One of the staff hurried to introduce me. "This is our Director of Public Relations, Mrs. Emma Cole, the legal wife of Director Ethan Cole. Today, Mrs. Cole is personally representing the company to visit Miss Miller." Hannah's mother froze for a second before crying out, "That's impossible. Ethan would never betray Hannah." I pulled out our marriage certificate from my bag. "What if your daughter has been lying to you all along?" By the time I left the hospital, shouting and sobbing echoed through the ward as though the ceiling might split. "Hannah Miller, I raised you with so much hardship, and you turned out so shameless, stealing another woman's husband. You knew he had a wife, yet you still interfered. That's beyond disgraceful." A resounding slap followed. I was already 7 months pregnant. The day of the accident from my previous life was drawing close. That day, rain poured heavily outside, but everyone in my family stayed home. No one went out. When I woke up, my mother was busy in the kitchen. Ever since I became pregnant, she had personally prepared bird's nest soup for me every day, watching over me until I finished it. Looking at her bustling figure, my nose stung and tears spilled uncontrollably. She turned around and saw me wiping my eyes, mistaking my tears for sadness about Ethan. She softened her voice to comfort me. "He's not worth your sorrow." I hugged her tightly. "I'm not crying because of him. I'm crying because I have a mother who loves me. These are tears of happiness." In my past life, I hadn't even said a proper goodbye before leaving this world. My mother loved me so much, yet she was fragile. I couldn't imagine how she had survived all those years weighed down by regret. My father was at the dining table, frowning as he read documents, the crease between his brows forming deep lines. I walked over and set a file in front of him. "Dad, take a look at this company. What do you think?" Curious, my mother leaned over. She didn't understand business, but she knew our company was facing many problems. Before long, her face lit up with joy. "Emma, is this your company?" I nodded gently. Back in high school, I had overheard my father mention this issue, so when I studied abroad, I always kept it in mind. I befriended a researcher who lacked funding. I needed technical expertise, she needed capital, so we combined efforts and started a company. I used the money my parents had gifted me over the years as a symbolic investment from our family. Because research was difficult, and I feared disappointing my father, I didn't dare say anything until we had results. Thankfully, I persevered. Despite countless failures, in the end, I obtained a patent. I spoke gently, but my eyes were resolute. My father flipped quickly through the file as I explained. After skimming just a few pages, he shot up from his chair, trembling with excitement. "Emma, you've not only helped me, you've done something monumental for Cole Group. You're the family's true benefactor." He started to raise his hand to embrace me, but hesitated and pulled back. I smiled and took the initiative, wrapping my arms around him. "Before I went abroad, I promised I'd never let you down." My mother's eyes glistened with tears. Emma, I always knew you were the best. Just then, Ethan walked into the house and caught sight of the scene. His face darkened instantly, and without a word, he turned and headed upstairs. In the early years, while my father fought over assets with my uncle secretly registered several overseas companies. During the internal chaos, he quietly replaced our suppliers with his own firms to wedge himself into our supply chain. By the time my father discovered it, one of those suppliers already had us by the throat. For years, my father agonized over how to replace them with better sources, but every attempt at substitution had failed. When my uncle learned that Cole Group had signed a 5-year deal with AN, he immediately declared a 30% price increase, warning that this was just the beginning. We all knew that once we accepted, the entire product line would spiral into a deadly cycle. Fortunately, my father had long since investigated and uncovered who truly stood behind that supplier. He quickly expanded into new business areas, so that particular chain was no longer our only lifeline. Still, because it was part of my grandfather's legacy, my father couldn't bear to abandon it. To him, my uncle's schemes were like phlegm stuck in his throat, too disgusting to swallow, too stubborn to spit out. Luckily, the patent I had invested in didn't just fully replace the old product, it also promised significantly improved efficiency and profit. In my past life, I had just received this patent when the accident struck, and I never got the chance to tell him. I never knew if, because of my uncle's interference, Cole Group's cooperation with AN had been jeopardized. But now that I had another life, what I wanted to change was never just my own fate. My father immediately decided to promote me from director of PR to vice president, placing me in charge of the AN partnership and new business expansion. For the first time, I put forward my own request. I want to keep my position as director of PR. If a public battle arises, the communications system must remain under my control, and I will never betray Cole Group because my goal is the entire company. For the first time, I saw recognition fill my father's eyes as he looked at me. When I returned to my room, it was rare to find Ethan actually lying on the bed. The moment he saw me, he sat up. Emma, I heard the whole conversation. Congratulations. He reached out as if to hug me, a faint smile curving his lips. A smile so soft it reminded me of mist swirling above a steaming cup of tea, or the first pear blossoms touched by morning dew. Long, long ago, Ethan had smiled at me like that, but the feeling drifted past like the wind, vanishing before it could ever reach my heart. Of course, I had never loved him. It was like my life had been swapped out, handed to me by my parents. Everything I had ever done for Ethan Cole was nothing more than a transaction. When did I first learn the truth about my identity? 6 years old? 9? 10? I couldn't remember clearly, maybe even earlier. A faint, cold smile tugged at the corner of my lips, so different from Ethan's fake grin. Mine carried nothing but contempt. I brushed off the hand he was reaching toward me and walked to the sofa in the corner, sitting down calmly. Say it. Why are you back this time? All my life, I had cleaned up countless messes for Ethan. Piece by piece, I had indulged him until he became an arrogant, selfish man, blinded by obsession with love. Seeing my bluntness, Ethan dropped the pretense. If it weren't for me, Smith would have never come to inspect Cole Group. I raised a brow. So what? Ethan crossed his legs, adopting the smug posture of a spoiled playboy. That alone is worth at least 20 million, isn't it? My father was the textbook Eastern patriarch. While he held power, no finances or authority ever slipped outside his grasp. Over the years, Ethan had squandered nearly everything left in his accounts. The downtown apartment he bought for Hannah Miller had drained most of his savings. She was like a leech. Once attached, she would keep sucking blood to feed herself. The private investigator had already reported to me. Lately, Hannah's place had a distinguished guest staying over, someone who hadn't left in quite some time. Ethan demanding 20 million now was surely tied to that guest. In my past life, I had investigated Hannah thoroughly. That day, after we saw my parents off at the airport for their vacation, Ethan caught sight of the investigator's photos on our way back. He thought I was slandering Hannah and exploded, arguing with me on the highway. At that exact moment, she called, claiming she was unwell and showing signs of miscarriage. Enraged, Ethan had thrown me out of the car right there on the freeway. The sky was dark, rain pouring in torrents, and then the car Hannah had arranged rammed straight into me. Thinking of it, my eyes narrowed slightly. You really know how to put a price on things, don't you, Ethan? Even sleeping with me for one night, you dare demand 20 million? Fury flashed across his face. He shot up, gripping my cheeks hard, forcing me to look up at him. Emma, don't overstep. Don't forget who gave you everything you have today. Without the title of Mrs. Cole, you're nothing, just a woman no one would want. I gave a cold, scornful laugh. If I really owed my position today to you, then why are you here begging me for money? Even the bags and jewelry you buy for your mistress are paid with my money. Do you have the face to say that? My parents are right downstairs. Why don't you go ask them if they'll give you any? Ethan knew my father's temper all too well. If he dared to open his mouth for money, all he'd get was a storm of insults. He had no other way left but to come to me. But the way he came, his attitude, was beyond terrible. Let me guess what the money's for, I sneered. Buying back Hannah's secretly snapped scandal photos, or patching up your brother-in-law's gambling debts? Ethan's face shifted from green to pitch black. My soft laugh cut sharper than a knife. So I guessed right, didn't I? He froze for a moment, then suddenly roared, slamming his fist down hard on the glass coffee table. The surface cracked from the center outward, splitting into a web of jagged lines. Like a massive spider web, Ethan's bleeding hand looked like prey caught in a net, still thrashing hopelessly to break free. Emma, don't you dare try to come between us. His eyes were bloodshot, veins bulging across his neck and forehead. Hannah was right. She knew if I came back, you'd put all the blame on her. He was trying desperately to convince himself, but in his mind, one image after another stacked up. Every strange detail he'd noticed at the Miller household gnawed away at his trust like a swarm of rats. Most of the time, the truth didn't even matter anymore, because once the seed of doubt was planted, it took root and sprouted in the cracks. From then on, every moment of hesitation only fed that crack, making it grow larger. I opened a drawer, pulled out a thick stack of photos and documents, and hurled them at him. The pictures scattered across the floor like snow, each one too sordid to look at. Ethan sat on the ground, clutching his head and pulling at his hair as if trying to rip himself awake. I rose and gave him a cold glance. Beg me, maybe I'll reconsider, just like the time I knelt before you, and you coldly ordered me around. He lifted his tear-streaked face to me, eyes weak and helpless. It's not true. It can't be true. Hannah would never lie to me. I was done wasting time. I turned toward the door, but just as my hand touched the knob, Ethan lunged, pinning me against the wall, both hands crushing my throat, his face twisted in fury. Emma, you're too cruel. Don't blame me. This is your fault. In the struggle, I pulled a mini stun baton from my pocket and drove it hard into his side. A scream ripped through the room. He finally released me, collapsing onto the floor. Gasping like someone reborn, I staggered out, clutching the wall for support. I barely reached the stairway before everything went black. When I woke again, I was in the hospital. My mother was by my side, holding my hand, her head resting in exhaustion on the bed. I looked down at my still round belly and exhaled in relief. She stirred awake, helping me sit up quickly. Emma, are you feeling any pain? I shook my head. Mom, I'm just thirsty. She gently held the cup to my lips. After I drank, her voice grew heavy. There's something I need to prepare you for. I stayed calm. It's about Ethan, isn't it? She nodded softly. When you fainted, everyone was focused on getting you here. No one noticed him. The butler said he woke up like a madman, stormed out, and no one could stop him. Her hand covered her face as she sobbed. It was raining, the roads slick, thought he was driving too fast. He crashed into a tree, killed instantly. The Cole estate was far from the city center, the road home deserted, and Ethan had always driven recklessly. After his cremation, Hannah, her belly huge, stormed into the company demanding responsibility. I'm carrying a Cole heir. You must take care of me. I nodded to my secretary. Is Miss Miller here? Arrange for a DNA test. Hannah frowned. What's the point? He's dead. Why test anything? I explained evenly. Even if the father is gone, we can still compare the child's bloodline to his grandparents. If it's a boy, the Y chromosome will match his grandfather. If it's a girl, the X chromosome can be compared to his grandmother. A month later, Capital City buzzed with shocking news. A young woman named Miller had been beaten into a coma by her own brother for blocking the sale of their home so their mother could remarry. Her mother admitted she had little income, couldn't afford long-term care, and begged her daughter's former company and society to help. But the woman's identity was quickly exposed online. The internet erupted in fury and curses. Time slipped quietly by. 15 years later, I officially took full control of the Cole family empire. Over the next 15 years, our revenue kept breaking records year after year. When my son graduated college and started working at the company, I pulled out an old notebook hidden deep in my wardrobe. The pages were yellowed with age, filled with records of important moments. On a blank page, I wrote, "This is the second time I've been given the chance to live again. If there is ever a third, I hope